I'm joined now by money expert Brendan Burgess for our weekly Money Stories slot. Every week over the summer we'll be discussing the stories of people's debts, their loans and their options when they have to make financial decisions. And Brendan, a good news story for a change today. What have we got?
Yeah, up to now we've been talking about people losing their jobs, being unable to pay their mortgage and being in deep negative equity. But today we're looking at a situation. What happens if you are well paid, you have a good job and you think it might be the right time to trade up? So we're asking the question, is it a good time to trade up? And we're talking to Trina and Brian. They're a young married couple who have a child, and they've another child on the way. They have equity in their house and they're wondering, is this a good time to trade up?
OK, so with prices still falling, is it a good time to trade up, or are prices going to fall even further? This is what Trina is thinking.
We're hoping that because we're trading up to a bigger house, that the house we'll be buying will have come down more in price than we'll have lost on our house. So even though it hurts to be selling your house for less than you've paid for it, when you kind of balance up the fact that you're getting a bigger house for a much lower price than it would have been a few years ago, we kind of feel that's the way you have to look at it if you want to be logical about the situation that you're going to be in, rather than looking at how much money you've lost on your existing house.
If you expect house prices, say, to fall by another 10%, is to sell this house now and then buy the other house when it's 10% cheaper.
Well, that would be the ideal situation, but I don't think anybody has a crystal ball. You know, you're picking things out of the sky and you just hope that you do it at the right time.
So, Brendan, is it a good time to trade up? What advice would you give to Trina and Brian?
Well, trading up involves two different decisions. The first decision is you've got to sell, and then the second decision is when to buy. So if you think that prices are going to fall further, which most people seem to think at the moment, well then what you should do is sell your current house as quickly as possible before prices fall further, and then wait until you think they're about to rise again before you buy the new house.
So go into rented accommodation for 6 months, a year.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's what Trina is doing in this situation. She has her house on the market and she's planning to rent as soon as she has her own house sold. If you think that house prices are going to rise, well, then you should sell your house immediately as well. Sell your house as quickly as possible, but then you should be buying as quickly as possible as well, because obviously if you think house prices are going to rise, you should buy very quickly. But the key thing is that you should sell your house and actually get the money in the bank, or at least have a contract signed before you make any commitment to buy another house. That's the really important point.
Very important. Any solicitor would advise you exactly the same thing. Now, the next question that Trina is asking herself is how much she can borrow. And she got a surprise when she approached two banks.
I've only approached two banks so far, and first of all I just gave National Irish Bank a call. We have our LTV tracker mortgage with them. And I found just the person I spoke to extremely unenthusiastic. Now, she gave me a kind of a list of their criteria. It's not based on salary with them, it's based on disposable income, and their loan to value ratio, I think, was 70 to 80% was the max, maybe 70%. 70 to 80% was the maximum that they would go to. So rather than pursuing with them, because I just wanted to get kind of a figure that I knew we'd be able to borrow, I went into Bank of Ireland and I gave them our details. And kind of on the initial information I gave them, they said they'd be willing to lend us around 500,000.
And how much do you feel that you can pay?
Oh, well, we've worked out basically based on what our mortgage is at the moment and how much we're saving, and then allowing for 2 childcare places when the new baby arrives, we've calculated we can afford to pay back 300,000 mortgage. I thought things would have changed, but they don't seem to have changed.
Okay, so the days of banks offering more than you think you can repay are not gone away, you know, Brendan.
Yeah, it's very strange that she's comfortable with borrowing 300,000, and yet Bank of Ireland is telling her, you know, it's okay, we'll give you 5 times your salary. I must say, I was very surprised at that. The important thing, I think, for people, if they are shopping around for a mortgage, is not to just rely on one lender, because it is still, even if you have a good case, as Trina has, it's quite difficult to get money, and it takes a while to get money. She has a record with NIB. She seems to have run into a difficulty with one person in NIB. They didn't explain the situation properly to her. I would certainly not be writing off NIB at this stage. She should go back into them and say, well, you know, put me through to somebody else in the mortgage department who can talk to me about it. They've obviously explained the situation a lot. They've made it difficult for her, and they're not trying to make it difficult. Some banks lend on a percentage of your disposable income, so they will maybe lend you enough money that the interest rate would be 45% of your disposable income. And I think it's much easier for people to understand 3 times the salary or 5 times the salary. But it'll probably work out around the same thing. And she could go down the road with Bank of Ireland and then suddenly find that at the end they changed their criteria.
Yeah, there is another option though, because she could presumably, if somebody's prepared to give her more than she necessarily wants to borrow or thinks she can afford to pay back, the option is there to buy a bigger, more expensive house.
Yeah, and that's what worries me. I think in this situation, Trina really has her head screwed on. She has worked out how much childcare will be. She knows how much she's saving at the moment, and she's comfortable with a €300,000 mortgage. She's probably thinking, well, if I want to take a career break, or if I want to move to part-time, I don't want to be trying to service a $500,000 mortgage. And I think in this situation, people are aware that they could become wage slaves. And if she borrows $500,000, she'd be stuck with that for a long time to come. My worry is that when she goes and looks at houses, and although she'll have a budget of whatever, I think it's about $420 she's worked out, my worry is that she'll see a house at $450 and it'll be the house of her dreams, and she'll borrow that money because the bank is there. So this is an example of where somebody is being responsible. You could argue that the bank is being a little bit too flexible, and suddenly then you have irresponsible borrowing and irresponsible lending. And she's setting out on the right path here.
Column texts in to say people need to stop buying houses and start buying homes. The mob frenzy to look at your house as an investment rather than a home is what got us into this mess. In fairness, I'm not suggesting that Column is saying this, but Trina and Brian are buying a home. They're not buying a house. And not
very definitely. And in fact, she actually discusses that later in the segment.